Welcome to the 1455 2021 Summer Festival. We are celebrating the art of storytelling. I'm Beth Ann Patrick, a board member and also a programs committee member of 1455. And I have the distinct pleasure and honor today of being here with Sunny Hostin. Hi, Sunny. It's so great to see you. I'm going to tell everyone who you are. Sunny Hostin, for those who don't know her, shouldn't be that many of you, is on The View every day. And she also is a little bit busy, let's see, writing, acting as a legal correspondent for Good Morning America, doing all kinds of other things. She's a very busy woman. And so, Sunny, the fact that you made some time for our festival today and to talk about your new book, which we'll discuss in a moment, it's really fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I heard book and festival, and you had me at hello. I love both.
You do. I know you're a real book lover, and we'll get into that. But first things first, what we want to talk about today is the book that's behind you on your beautiful etagere, Summer on the Bluffs. This is very exciting, not just because it's your first novel, and we'll talk about your memoir as well, but Summer on the Bluffs is the first novel in a planned trilogy. So the first question I have for you before we discuss the trilogy is, how do you find time to write books in your schedule, in your busy schedule? Because I'm sure people ask that and wonder that all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely a labor of love. It's something that I enjoy doing so much that I'm able to find the time. I love storytelling. As a lawyer, that is really what trial lawyers do. It doesn't seem like that's what we do, but we really do. We tell stories of social justice. We tell stories of things that have happened to people, and we want to convey those stories and bring people into the moment. And this is very much in line with what I've always done. And so certainly putting pen to paper and writing a novel is a little bit different, but I found it to be a really joyful experience. And so my time for writing was really late at night because I have kids and a hubby and a full-time job. But I'm also a little bit of an insomniac. And when everyone else goes to sleep, that's sort of when my mind kind of takes off into these other worlds. And I just find it to be really invigorating and energizing. And it's an escape for me. I guess that's how I find the time. I'm escaping, really.
That it's wonderful. We all need escapes, but do you get to sleep at a certain point? Honey, do you sleep?
I do. I do. I don't sleep probably as much as I should, but I usually sleep around 6 hours a night. I know it's not enough, but
That's better than Martha Stewart, Sonny.
She doesn't sleep very much at all.
No, she doesn't. Now, when did the idea for a book, well, did the idea for the trilogy arrive fully formed, or was it first the idea for Summer on the Bluffs?
It was first the idea of writing about these African American beachfront properties. That's sort of what started the journey for me. I was looking for a book to read about sort of centered on women of color in particular, and something very joyful and light and sort of taking place on the beach. And then I couldn't find it, so I decided to write what I wanted to read.
Exactly.
And, yeah. And I was very good friends with Larry Graham. He passed away this year, but he wrote a book called Our Kind of People. And in it, he examined the fact that there were these beachfront communities that Black folks were allowed to buy.
Right.
And I remember thinking, allowed, that just sounds so restrictive. But in fact, the experience was very welcoming and inclusive. And as I started myself thinking about those places, there were places where I felt loved and welcomed. And I thought about Oak Bluffs, and I thought about Sag Harbor, and I thought about Highland Beach. And I thought, well, those would be really wonderful places to explore, not only, fiction, but also history. the history of African Americans, sort of the bourgeoisie of the African American community that people don't really know exists.
Well, exactly. And I think that's why one of the reasons we have to talk about this, because Summer on the Bluffs is about Oak Bluffs at Marthas Vineyard, that is sometimes also called the Inkwell, an historically African American community on this island that is known for two things: lots of money and wasps. So there really is a disconnect in some people's minds. They don't realize that these historically African American and upper class communities exist. And I want to talk about that Black upper class because it not only is very important to these books, but it's particularly important to Summer on the Bluffs. And we're going to talk about a couple of your characters. So tell me a little bit about our kind of people and this rich history of very well-to-do African American families in the United States.
Yeah, I just felt that coming on the heels of really a racial reckoning and police violence against African Americans, African American men in particular, but women as well,
Mhm.
and the trauma that we see so often in the media of the Black community, I thought, well, it would be nice to give and to highlight the beauty of Black excellence as well,
Yeah.
and the history of Black excellence, because people have been summering on Oak Bluff since before the Harlem Renaissance.
Right.
And there have been artists and politicians and teachers and lawyers and doctors and wealthy people vacationing there. And I felt that it was something that was really necessary to put out into the ether, so that people would realize that there was not only something to explore and exalt, but also something to aspire to for all
Mhm.
of us who were so tired of being sort of put into this monolithic, vision of what the African American community was.
Right.
Because I myself grew up poor in the projects in the South Bronx, and I didn't know that this kind of community existed until I was a teenager. And I remember getting off the ferry and thinking, my God, these people have owned these homes for generations. This sort of wealth, this sort of generational wealth in the African American community really exists. And I wanted more people to know about it because I think it's just so very important.
I remember you telling me a story the last time we spoke about being sent to Martha's Vineyard through the Jack and Jill Clubs
Yes.
Foundation. And a lot of people in the white community and in other communities as well don't know about the Jack and Jill Clubs, which are really, again, also very, I don't want to say old, but long-term, very important fixtures on the African American social scene. But one of the things that you said to me really stood out, which was on that ferry, it wasn't just that you were seeing wealthy people. It was that you were seeing people of color who were wearing these clothes that you'd only ever seen on white men and women.
Yes.
That I found really compelling. And it must have been such an amazing moment to realize that these things didn't just belong to the white community.
Yeah, it was just, I grew up going to Catholic school and wearing a Catholic school uniform. So I knew the uniform of
Right.
a Catholic schoolgirl. But when I thought about the uniform of the well-heeled or the well-to-do, it was just sort of like khakis and loafers and boat shoes and Lily Pulitzer and Ralph Lauren and that kind of thing that you would look through, let's say, Town and Country or Vanity Fair and find those things. And as in pinks and greens and powder blue and
It's so true.
uh, and I J. Crew, and I sort of walked off the ferry, and I was inundated with that.
Mhm.
And golf clubs, Black men with golf clubs and
tennis rackets. And
yes, and tennis rackets. And it was just so fascinating to me that this world is attainable,
Mhm.
exists, and the Black folks are really a part of that. Not just the Obamas and not just the Jordans and not just the Valerie Jarretts, but also, artists and lawyers and teachers and nurses and doctors and just hardworking middle class folks that have passed along this generational wealth, that are now upper middle class and upper class. And it was something that makes you realize that perhaps, this is something that I can do too.
well, I like the word attainable because we have to talk about one of your main characters, Amma, to whose house everyone returns summer after summer, her Chateau Laveau on Martha's Vineyard. And the reason we have to talk about attainable with Amma is that even though she is a woman who has attained the epitome of grace and elegance and luxury, she basically has everything she could want. And we all want what Amma has, from her beautiful battery of Le Creuset pans to her French pajamas. But she didn't come from all of that.
Yeah.
She actually did work, and her story, which I don't want to spoil for readers, is a wonderful one about working very, very hard to get to where you want to be the kind of person you want to be, not simply a person of style, but also a person of substance. And that's why attainability, I think, Sunny, is such an important word to me, because these are not characters who are simply running around spending money and enjoying private jets. These are characters who care about their community.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Yes, that was extremely important to me because there seems to be sometimes this notion that you have someone that quote unquote makes it,
Yeah.
and they forget where they came from and they forget their community, and they sort of, gild their toilet bowls and their fixtures and and forget about everything else. And
Right.
Amma is not that person.
No.
She is the person who is self-made, remembers where she came from, and has opened up the door and wants to pull other people along with her.
Yes.
And elevating everyone's station, because she knows that there is, that you can succeed alone, but that's a lonely type of success, but that
Nice
you
put.
thrive in community. And I thought it was just really lovely to explore that, and also explore the notion of new money versus old money. I mean, Amma,
Mhm.
I think, is the epitome of what people think more of old money. She's not flashy.
No.
She's not. It's not cheapened at all. She knows the value of money because she's in finance, right?
Right.
But she loves nice things, and she is she's not ashamed of liking nice things. And I don't think we should be ashamed of liking nice things, especially if you worked hard for them.
That's right. And she also is not a wasteful person, or a person who spends just to spend. One of the things I love about Amma is her cooking, and just how much she loves to feed people, and she really knows how to cook. That's her New Orleans side. But with talking about Amma, one of the things that, oh gosh, there's so many things to ask you, but before we talk about the Goddaughters, let's talk about Omar, Amma's husband. And there are other men in this book. And again, I don't want to spoil things for anyone, but we can talk about Omar. And he is this incredible avatar of, he's the husband and mentor everyone wants.
Yes.
Omar is so good. Where does he come from? Who is he a conglomeration of?
Yeah, he is. I'm almost embarrassed to say, because I have such a wealth of riches in my life when it comes to male role models.
Mhm.
He absolutely comes from my father. I have an incredibly close relationship with my father, even though he was a teenage dad.
Wow.
Yeah, he's just always been in my corner and cheering me on. He's probably one of my biggest cheerleaders, believes in dreams, believes anything is attainable, especially for women.
And
Um,
especially for his daughter.
his daughter, for
I
sure.
love that.
And so Omar is based in part on my dad, and also on my dear husband, because um, my husband is successful in his own right. He's an orthopedic surgeon, but he just wants to be as far away from the limelight as possible. I have to beg and plead for him to go to any event with me. The Emmys, no thank you.
Wow.
Movie premieres, no thank you. It's pretty hard to get him to do those things, but he is my um, just fiercest cheerleader. And he has no problem with letting me take center stage. And I wanted Amma to have a partner like that, because
Yes.
you must have a partner that is not only your equal, but a partner that is willing to let you shine. And I also find that with Black men, unfortunately, um, there is also um, these tropes in the media that they're not around as dads, that they're not around as husbands, and that they're either, if they're successful, they're basketball players, football players, or actors. And so I wanted Omar to be a successful attorney, but also I wanted him to struggle with the notion of acceptance, that even though he has this very robust home life, he needs to be accepted at work. And in fact, that is, in my opinion, his biggest flaw, and leads in a way to his downfall, in a sense.
It does. And,
Yeah.
and there we go. We will not spoil that.
Spoil it, but
Talking about Omar leads me to talk about the three Goddaughters. And of course, these three women are going to be threaded through the other two books as well. But we have Perry and Olivia, and why can't I remember? Dulcie.
No, Billy.
Millie, sorry.
Last time you
Oh,
said
I know who now. Dulcie is another character. See,
says Billy's.
Thank you. My goodness, keeping all of the characters straight in all of the books I read,
I'm
not
sure.
easy.
No.
Thank you, Sunny, for not calling me out on that. But these three women are goddaughters to Amma and Omar, and as we'll find out, each one has come into their lives in a different way for a different reason. They don't know until the book. That's part of the big denouement. But what I found totally fascinating is that some writers would have been really tempted to take these three young women and make them best friends from the get-go. They meet the first summer when they're 13, and here we are now, they're in their 30s or 40s, and they're just, they're having problems, but they can always turn to each other. And you did not choose that.
No.
You chose to make them quite distant to each other at some points and different from each other. And I wanted to ask you about that choice.
Yeah, that was intentional. And that is because I think as women, we're so complicated, we're so complex.
Sing it, Sunny.
And oftentimes I feel that it's brushed off to, well, women are more emotional. I don't think that is true. I think that we're very thoughtful. I don't want to, stereotype or generalize, but I think it comes from how multifaceted we are, and we're so layered and nuanced. And I really know it because I'm now raising a boy and a girl, two teenagers, and both teenagers, and I see it just in their very makeup. Approach different things. Part of it, I'm sure, is society. But I thought when women get together, we are really, if we're being honest, as friends, there are always going to be these clashes. And I myself am an only child. And so I have friends that have become sisters, and we are so different. And we've had times in our friendships, 30, 40-year friendships, where I start to think, am I ever going to speak to this woman again?
I have no idea what you mean. None.
Like, how could she think this? How could
Yes.
she do this? Why would she do this? And I think at the end of the day, that is what real friendship is, chosen sisters. And
Mhm.
I wanted to explore that and show that, not tell it, but show it.
Well, and you do show it. Each woman has a different challenge in front of her. And the challenges may be something that come up in this particular summer when Amma calls them back, to spend some time with her. But they also stem from what they were like as adolescents. And I know that that is a challenge as a writer to develop characters, and especially when, let's say, I'm not putting this on you, but let's pretend that you knew what you wanted those women to be like at a particular age and stage. You still have to make it work because you're going back in time to show us these three women when they're younger. So what was that something that you found particularly difficult, or was it something that really was just flew by?
It was, I wouldn't say it was it neither. I wouldn't say it flew by, or it was particularly difficult. What I will say is, I've thought about it a lot, in the sense that, maybe too much, my editor would say. I think that experiences can really change you.
Mhm.
And so as they were experiencing different things, I felt that those experiences were shaping each girl into the woman she would become.
Mhm.
Especially with Olivia and the death of her father, who adored her, and how her mother was in mourning, and the colorism that I
Yes.
think her mother sort of put on her, and Perry, with sort of seeing her parents' relationship and how she didn't really want to mirror that, even though they gave her this loving environment, and Billy, who is a lesbian, but
Right.
who is so fearless and knows pretty early on who she is, and doesn't care what people think, but still is challenged when she's in a partnership. And what does that look like for someone who is fierce and
Yes.
and opinionated? What does that look like? And so each time something happened, I wanted to and she has this incredible relationship with her father, but not necessarily with a mother figure. And I just wanted to think about how that would shape each girl into the woman she becomes, because I think those types of life experiences really do shape you. Even though we say, well, doesn't matter where you came from, it just matters where you're going, but it shapes us, right?
It does shape us. And I did really appreciate that about Billy, that her issue wasn't about coming out. It
No.
wasn't about being gay. She just is a lesbian. She's known that. Her issue was about independence versus
Yes.
dependence, independence versus a relationship.
Right.
And seeing that in a book that is really a fun book also was just great,
Oh,
because it's almost always about, oh my gosh, does anyone else know? No, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
nobody cares. At least I didn't. I was like, come on.
Exactly. That was just wonderful. And they each have so much that they have to deal with, in themselves, with their relationships with each other, and then of course with the things that Amma is telling them and also asking of them.
Yeah.
So there's a great deal going on in Summer on the Bluffs. And I wonder, is there any way, how do I put this? I know you're going to sustain it in the other two books,
Yes.
but is there any way to tell us if these characters will show up again. The
Oh,
next one is set in Sag Harbor.
yes. Well, I'm writing it now.
Yay!
And you know what's so lovely actually about writing the trilogy now and writing the second book after this first book was sort of just released, because I wrote the first book a little while ago, and because of COVID, we held it back until
Mhm.
this May.
Yep.
And so now I'm in the process of writing the second book while I'm getting feedback from the first. And so I'm participating in things like
Oh,
this and book clubs just all around the
that's
country.
dangerous, Sunny.
Everybody's telling me it's dangerous, but what's so lovely is I'm hearing things like, we want to hear more about this person's journey.
Mhm.
And those are the journeys that I wanted to explore more. So I feel like my fingers on the pulse of where the story should go. And so I'm not really second guessing it, where I think had I heard different feedback, I may have second guessed it. So that feels pretty good.
Excellent.
So you will hear more of other characters. I don't know if you want me to tell you which
I
one.
do. I do. Tell us.
Okay.
Tell us.
I felt that Olivia had the most unresolved issues.
Mhm.
And Olivia is angry. She's angry about what she perceives as Omar's betrayal. She still mourns, I believe, the loss of her dad.
Right.
She wants to know more about her dad. She still has this sort of difficult relationship with her mom, as many daughters and mothers do. And she's uneasy about love. And she has this really great guy in Anderson who is sort of mysterious as well, because we don't know a lot about his background. And
Right.
so you will see, and she needs to find another home, because she needs to find a sanctuary where she feels safe to explore these issues.
Well, and one of the issues too that you mentioned earlier is colorism. And that's not just a personal issue, that's a societal issue. That's a Western issue.
Yes,
And
it is. And I think going into this pandemic, and then the convergence of the economic crisis, the global pandemic, and the racial reckoning, I think that would find Olivia, a finance expert who is in an interracial relationship,
right.
looking for answers, at a perfect place to explore Summer on Sag.
Well, now, Summer on Sag, now we know the title. So I know a little bit about your own experience on Martha's Vineyard, and I know that your family loves Martha's Vineyard.
Yes.
And as you told me, your kids actually plan their summer vacations and their birthday celebrations around time on Martha's Vineyard. So every detail is so authentic. Everything from the flying cloud carousel and its brass rings to restaurants that people frequent. Tell me about your experience of Sag. And Sag Harbor is, if anyone out there, you should read Sunny's books first, but also read Sag Harbor by Colson Whitehead, because that is such a different Colson book about sort of fun in the summer at a place that is traditionally Black. So tell us about, visiting there and how you've learned about Sag.
Well, Sag Harbor I came to in a much different way than I did Bluffs. I came to it as an adult as opposed to a child.
Mhm.
And I was friends with Barbara Smith, B. Smith.
Yes.
The restaurateur.
We love her here in DC.
Yes.
Loved her.
Yes. And I was friends with Barbara, or B. And she had a restaurant in DC, but I would frequent her place in Manhattan, in Hell's Kitchen. And she said, you've got to come out to Sag Harbor. She had a home in Sag Harbor.
Mhm.
And she, along with Larry Graham, would tell me about this beachfront community in Sag Harbor. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? She's like, I'm opening up a restaurant in Sag Harbor, right on the beach. And there are these three communities. One is Sag Harbor Hills, one is Nineveh, and the other one is Azurest, meaning, just beautiful blue water. And it's right on the bay. And it is a little different than Oak Bluffs because it's not as well known, but it
Right.
is the same sort of theory and same sort of history, except not as old. And this was from about the 1950s, where Black families got together and started this beachfront community
Hmm.
on land that wasn't desirable because it was the bay and not the ocean. So
Right.
she invited me to visit her restaurant opening in Sag Harbor. And boy, did I fall in love yet
Oh,
again. I was introduced to a gentleman. His name is Bill Pickens. His father he's in his 80s now, but his father was one of the gentlemen that bought the first beachfront properties there. And he is sort of the mayor of the Sands. They call it SANS, the Sands community.
I love that.
Yeah, it's short for Sag Harbor Hills, Azurest, and Nineveh.
Nineveh.
He is incredible. He knows the history. His great grandfather was an activist and was one of the first Black graduates at Yale.
Oh, wow.
Has a wing named after him, and so the history is just alive with Mr. Pickens. I sit with him every summer on Sag Harbor. I'll be heading there I'm always there for July 4th. I'm there for Labor Day as well. And there are a lot of other Black celebrities and well-to-do people that live there, like Tamron Hall, Don Lemon,
Wow.
Joy Behar.
Hey, Joy Behar, not African American, but you know
Not
what? Honorary.
but an ally and friend who
That's right.
lives right around the corner from the Sands community and is often on the beach with me.
Oh, so cool.
Vanessa Williams is also on that beach. The Graves family of the Black Enterprise fame, they're on that beach. So it's something that I'm going to explore, give some more history, and there is a character that I'm paying homage to, Bill Pickens.
That is going to be so much fun, and another, glimpse into history as well as into contemporary life. And I hope all those girlfriends of yours make little cameos too. Please, love Tamron, love Joy, want them, all of them, want them in there.
A whole new group of friends.
Yes.
And people that we will introduce to the readers, and I just think you're gonna love them. I really do.
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about the third one. And I know you probably don't have as much to say about it right now because you're in the middle of writing number 2. But you mentioned the third place and I didn't recognize it. So tell me about it.
The third place, I should also mention Lindsay Davis's of ABC. Her family is also on that beach.
Oh, love it.
She will make an appearance. She doesn't like that, but she will. Highland Alan Iverson also is on that beach, and his family. I believe I have that right. And so there may be a basketball player that makes an appearance. Lovely wife. So anyway, Highland Beach is also a beachfront community in Maryland. And
I don't know about this.
Who knew? It's been there for a very long time. It has a similar history. Black folks were looking for a place that they were allowed to be in the water because historically they were just not allowed not only to buy beachfront property, but not allowed to go to pools, with white beachgoers or pool goers, and they found Highland Beach. And it's been around for much longer than the Sands community. And my friend, Erica, has a home there. And so she invited me there a couple of years ago. And I visited, and it's just a very unique place because it has, it's almost Southern in its sensibility.
Right.
You have Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard is very New England.
Exactly.
Hamptons is very New York. But Highland Beach is much more Southern. And so they've had to deal actually with more systemic racism and issues in that community. So the story is really interesting. And it's also interesting in how they can tie some of the homeowners to the Geechee community. And
That is really interesting.
really interesting. So it's something that I'm trying to research. I'm going to be meeting this summer with 5 homeowners that are in their late 90s. So I need to
Oh my
get there. I mean, I feel they sound so strong that I think they're going to be here forever.
Get there, Sonny. Those
there.
are stories that need to be told.
I need to get their
Yeah.
stories, but it just is a place that's just very robust in terms of the history, and I'm gonna get that story and tell the world.
That is going to, I can't wait for that one. And I'm sure you have many other ideas, and we should all be, letting Sunny write instead of talking to her. But this is, you are, it's fascinating to me that you do so many things so well. And one of the things that I think you do so well is parent. The way you talk about your children is really lovely. And so, in having written about these women in Summer on the Bluffs,
Yeah.
and looking back at them as adolescents, what would you like your daughter to take away from reading Summer on the Bluffs? I don't know if she'll be reading it at this point, or if she'll,
Racy. I'm a traditional kind of square parent, as my kids often tell me I've got to get with the times, but
you went to Catholic school, lady.
I know. I'm just so Catholic in that sense. The sex scenes take it off the shelf right now, unfortunately. But I hope that when she is able to read it, and she wants to read it, I just haven't.
I'm sure she does.
That she takes a couple of things from it. She loves Oak Bluff so much that I know that she'll see the Flying Horses Carousel, and she'll see Nancy's and Donovan's and Jimmy C's, and she's gonna be able to just recognize so many of the places, and I love that for her. I also, she has just one brother, but she has girlfriends that have become sister friends, and I see that happening, and she invites them to the vineyard with her when we go, and so I'm hoping that she'll see that you can have chosen sisters, and then finally, I hope that she realizes that she can create worlds, that she has stories in her, because she is a phenomenal writer. So I'm hoping that that I've got a little writer on my hands.
A new kind of dynasty. A new kind of that is really exciting. Speaking of writing and reading, as I said when we were in the green room, if we can call it that on Zoom, before, you probably read as much, if not more, than I do. And the reason this is extraordinary is I am a book critic, a full-time book critic, and that's really all I do. You have a lot going on. My children are no longer at home. I don't have a different full-time job, etc. I think you are one of the most interesting avid readers I've come across in my professional life. And so I want to talk for a few minutes about books, aside from your own, and feel free to talk about books that you would like to lift up. But also whatever is on that nightstand of yours, because Sunny, you just have books all over the house, don't you?
I do. See, I'm looking around, I'm like, oh,
oh no.
I'm so mad at this point. Well, let me grab them.
Oh yes, excellent. Oh, we like show and tell in my interviews. That's the best.
It's I can't help myself, because I'm gonna be able to go away, so that's always the best time for me,
of course,
to read. And I haven't been able to finish some of the books because I've been writing Summer on Sag. So I'm almost finished with The Vanishing Half. I keep on putting it down and picking it up, putting it down, because I almost don't want
to. Vanishing Half. Love it.
I just think it's just really interesting. Robin Roberts did it on Good Morning America, and
it's a very different book, and it's very different from the Mother's
yeah,
written in its first book too.
I just think it's pretty fascinating. I just got this in the mail.
Ooh, I just reviewed it a couple of weeks
Did
ago.
you?
Yeah, and what I'm going to say, I can tell you I loved it, but I'm not going to tell you about the ending because it is whoop.
Is it? I mean, it just sounded like Devil Wears Prada meets
Oh, it is so crazy in the best way. It is so, when you get to the end, you know what? I'm going to have to ask you to have Alex email me when
Yeah.
you reach the end of The Other Black Girl, because everyone, Zakiya Dalila Harris's debut novel, The Other Black Girl,
Yes.
is something, it is a perfect beach read this summer.
Yes.
It's also completely you'll get to a certain point and you'll think, what, where am I still reading the same book? Keep going, just keep going.
I just feel like it's sort of, I don't know, it looked so interesting to me that I thought, I'm going away and I'm going to read this.
You got to, that's perfect.
This is not a new book, but it was just recommended to me, and it's called The Fourth Turning.
Oh, I don't know this one.
Yeah, and apparently it's what the cycles of history tell us about America's next rendezvous with destiny. And
Oh,
we're sort of, what happens is sort of, I guess, cyclical, and that it just happens again and again and again, and you can sort of foretell what's going to happen. And
the
I think
author's name?
the authors are William Strauss and Neil Ho. And I just feel that maybe it'll help me in my storytelling too, because
Very interesting.
yeah, so I think that's kind of interesting. And I started reading this book called about the Second Amendment by Carol. It's called The Second by Carol Anderson.
Carol Anderson is an unbelievable thinker and writer.
Oh, interesting. And I
Mhm.
started listening to it on Audible. My daughter's in sleepaway camp in New Hampshire. So, um, so in driving around, I have been listening to that. And then someone told me that she was the author of White Rage, which
Yes.
I have not read it. But the second is
Not White Fragility, but White Rage. I want to make sure people know that, because White Fragility is by a white woman author.
yeah.
Dr. Anderson is an African-American woman, and White Rage is a phenomenal book.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, which I think everyone's kind of shocked that I have not, because it's about the racial divide that we're seeing in our country, which is I don't like that I'm seeing this
Right.
divide, especially as someone who is biracial. So I thought that I should read it. So those are the books that I just got in this week.
Oh, that's going to be that's a great vacation stack of books to take along with you. I mean, and Audible audiobooks of any kind are just amazing, I think now.
Great.
And I like to make sure that people know that, they do go to the same part of your brain as books you read.
Yes, they're wonderful. Whoopi Goldberg, because she's dyslexic, only does books on Audible. So she's made me such a huge fan of it. And in fact, she sends all of the hosts her favorite books on Audible. She uses her credits to send us books. And so I listen to them quite often. I tend to like reading better. It just feels, I don't know, it feels familiar to me. I'm starting to read more and more. And what I liked about the second is, I believe Carol's not reading that one, but the person who's reading it is incredible. I just finished Paper Gods by Goldie Taylor. The narrator is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, if she doesn't win an award for that narration, I don't know who would. And then my book, of course, Summer on the Bluffs, January DuBois narrated my book, and she just brought it to life. It was just,
it makes such a difference. It really does. It's, it's not just like, I'm going to sit down and read this book, Beth Ann Patrick, no, it's got to be someone who really understands the nuances of a story. And so Summer on the Bluffs would be a great choice for an audiobook this summer. And I know we are just about out of time. We have a couple more minutes, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I also have to ask you about what it is like for you now to enter the world of, with I Am These Truths. You had a memoir. And, everyone, oh, memoir, ha, ha, ha. But then, when you write a novel, people seem to come alive, I've seen this again and again with people who have written different kinds of books and then published a novel. Are you hearing from anyone, not necessarily readers, but people from your past or your family or friends, and only in a good way? I'm not asking about the people, who are jerks or anything like that. But have you had any particular delightful encounter with someone who said, I read Summer on the Bluff, Sunny. I'm so proud of you. This is really exciting. Things like that.
Oh my gosh. It's been overwhelming, actually, and quite humbling, the reaction to the book. I have gotten that. I've gotten it from former professors that have said, I always knew that you were going to write, which I didn't know. I hope, but I didn't know. I think when it became a New York Times bestseller, people started reaching out to me more and more and more. Like, I read the book and this is phenomenal. And I read the book and I love it. And I read the book, and when is the next one? It's been really cool. In fact, I got a call from someone who was on Marthas Vineyard, a friend, in television. And he said, there are a group of women walking around with Summer on the Bluffs t-shirts and your book. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, they're walking around and they're like pointing things out. And so he said, can I tell them that I have you on the phone? And I said, please tell them. So he went up to one and said, I have Sunny Hostin on the phone. Can I take a picture of you guys? Because I just think she would just get such a kick out of it. And so ultimately they invited me to their book club on the Vineyard. Do you know that they had an entire schedule printed out about the book? They had cocktail hours based on the book. They had food based on the book, yoga, outings, and it was multi-generational. And then they found the house that was on the cover, and they asked the owner if they could take a picture, and they all were on the porch.
I am just getting a little a little goose pimply here. That is amazing. That is so.
I was in tears.
Yeah.
They related to it that much, and I was asking the generations, which was your favorite character? And the younger generation, they all loved Billy, which was fantastic. And then the other generations loved Omar,
of course.
It's the reception has been like that. So
that's incredible. And I see what you mean about it being humbling, because for anyone to feel that your words inspired that kind of passion and excitement, Sunny, that's just who you are. I know, I'm going to as well. That is so beautiful. That is actually changing people's lives, because as we said, or as you said towards the beginning of our talk, you wrote the book that you wanted to read, a book that wasn't available, and you now have women. Oh God, this is terrible.
It's kind of crazy.
I'm sorry. It's kind of crazy. You gave them the book that they didn't know they needed to read, that they wanted to read. And I know that books do change people's lives. And don't tell me what kind of book changes people's lives. You don't know. You don't know until that book has reached its reader. And so again, Sunny, I'm really honored. I'm really delighted. It's a pleasure always to talk to you. I can say always now. It happens again for Summer on Sag. And I want to say thank you so much for being here for the 1455 Lit Arts Summer Festival 2021. And Sunny Hostin, author of Summer on the Bluffs, which is out now, a New York Times bestseller. Get it, ladies, get it, men, get it, everyone. And Sunny, thank you again for taking the time to be here with us today.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure and honor.
Thank you.